And again, the opening turns of these players are going to be quite important. This is going to be a situation where they're both playing aggro decks, but Ben Friedman is going to have a slightly more powerful late game, and his deck's going to be a little bit better at blocking. Jim Davis is going to be a little more favored on the first 3 turns of the game, and then he's going to have the potential to finish Ben off with some burn spells.
Well, Ben Friedman is going to start off with an Eldrazi Temple and pass the turn. Jim has an Inspiring Vantage, a Monastery Swift Spear, and he's going to pay 2 life for Gitaxian Probe, and that's going to reveal Eldrazi Sky Spawner, Drowner of Hope, Thought-Knot Seer, Eldrazi Displacer, Path to Exile, and a Yavimaya Coast in Ben's hand. So he actually can only cast one of the cards in his hand currently.
Yeah, he's not too far away from a turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer, one good top deck, and we could see that come into play. The Eldrazi Sky Spawner is kind of a nice play also. It will at least be able to buy Ben some time because it's 2 blockers for the cost of 1 card. Granted, they're likely to be just chump blockers, which is a little unfortunate for Ben, but at least he's getting some stuff in the way for Jim to slog through.
Jim is just going to attack for 2 with his Monastery Swift Spear. That's going to knock Ben Friedman down to 18. Ben will pick up another copy of Eldrazi Sky Spawner. He'll play the Yavimaya Coast and cast his Eldrazi Sky Spawner, falling down to 17. Looks like he's got his Sheriff token there for his Eldrazi
And
Scion.
This is an okay start for Ben. Not that great. He's not too far behind, though, because he was able to start on the play. So we're going to see what Jim has to follow up here and if Jim can push his advantage. If Jim had something like a Storm Chaser Mage and then this Gitaxian Probe, whoo mama, that would be a good turn for him.
So Jim will probe, falling down to 16, going to see the exact same hand that he saw last turn, minus the Yavimaya Coast.
And I think he drew a Storm Chaser Mage off that probe. If that had just been the other way around, he would have been able to get an extra damage across, but I think it's still probably going to be worth it for him to potentially play that Storm Chaser Mage if possible and just swing in.
And he's only going to attack with the Swift Spear.
So what's nice about
2/3.
what's nice about this is with 1 prowess trigger, Ben could potentially trade, but he'd have to worry about Jim having any instant whatsoever. And so with the Vapor Snag, this is going to end up being 4 damage that Ben is going to be dealt. So not a bad turn for Jim. I would like to see him use his other mana, though.
Oh, he did draw Cavernous Souls. He's going to name Eldrazi, play his Thought-Knot Seer, and target Jim Davis. Jim's going to reveal a hand: Inspiring Vantage, Storm Chaser Mage, Snapcaster Mage, Mutagenic Growth, and Mantis Rider. And we see here Jim's deck, looking over his list, he actually has 8 of the new fast lands from Kaladesh, 4 Inspiring Vantage and 4 Spirebluff Canal. That's one of the ways he's able to play all of these Phyrexian mana spells and use his life total to cheat the cost on those spells. Is, he really only has, looks like 3 shock lands and 6 fetches.
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the reasons that this Jeskai aggro deck has basically suddenly come onto the map. Previously, the cards were pretty good at racing, but not great at racing. But now, because you can build the deck in a way that you just don't take as much damage from your own mana bases, it really helps put you ahead in a race. So I find Jim's play on the previous turn pretty interesting. The advantage of him using that Vapor Snag is he made it so that Ben needed to top deck a land in order to play that Thought-Knot Seer. Jim had seen his hand seed that Ben was 1 land short of Thought-Knot Seer, and so the reason that you would play the Vapor Snag is try to deny Ben from playing it. But he could have also chosen to just play his Storm Chaser Mage and then follow it up with a turn 3 Mantis Rider, and that would have used his mana a bit more efficiently.
However, it turns out Ben Friedman did top deck a land. It's a very good one, Cavern of Souls, that he can name Eldrazi, so this gives him the 4th mana to play that Thought-Knot Seer, gives him a pain-free source of blue mana for his Sky Spawner and Drowner, but also gives him white mana for that Displacer in his hand.
Yeah, very, very important.
Mantis Rider is going to be the choice by Ben Friedman.
And I like the fact that Ben is going for the flying creature because it's the thing that he's going to have the hardest time dealing with. Ben doesn't have a lot of flying creatures, and the flying creatures he does have are rather small. They're only these 2/1 sky spawners.
Looks like Jim picks up another land for his turn.
And this is definitely the stage of the game where Jim is going to want to start attacking in the air and potentially finishing Ben off with some burn spells, because the ground is going to quickly get locked up by Ben Friedman.
Jim's going to take his time deciding how to proceed with his third turn.
And if we had seen Jim be on the play, we would probably see a much different game state where we would be looking at a similar board, but Ben would be down another 4 life or so. So it really does make a big difference in these situations, who is on the play and who's on the draw.
And here's an Inspiring Vantage from Jim Davis. He's going to cast Storm Chaser Mage.
And I think if I was Jim, I would just attack with the Monastery Swift Spear. He has the mutagenic growth, which Ben Friedman knows about. But Jim certainly wouldn't mind trading his mutagenic growth and Monastery Swift Spear for the Thought-Knot Seer and the Sky Spawner if given the opportunity.
All right, well, mutagenic, or the Sky Spawner is going to jump in front of the Swift Spear. Jim will fall to 14, and mutagenic growth his Storm Chaser Mage. That's going to take him up to 4 power and pump his Swift Spear because of the prowess. So Ben Friedman's going to fall down to 10. It's like he found a Windswept Heath. He's going to use that and fall down to 9.
And for the most part, Jim's been able to draw his cards in the order that he wants them, in the sense that he's had his early threats on the opening turns of the game, and now he's going to be looking to start leveraging his burn spells, maybe that Snapcaster Mage on the Vapor Snag, and try to squeeze in the last couple points of damage. But he's going to have a lot to fight through. Ben Friedman's probably going to be able to play a creature, and I believe he still has that Path to Exile, and now he has the white mana for it.
All right, Eldrazi Sky Spawner is going to come down for Ben Friedman. Come on, Ben, you know the rules. That brings with it a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion.
And if Ben tries to get aggressive here, it's going to be a little tricky, because if they're in a racing situation, Jim Davis is going to probably be the one who's favored, but Ben can't take too long to close out the game. So it's going to be a little bit of a tightrope walk for Ben to figure out exactly how he can get damage in without leaving himself too vulnerable to a counterattack.
Looks like Ben has came to that conclusion himself, and is potentially going to send this Thought-Knot Seer into the red zone.
And you can see him giving a lot of thought to this, because he does have the Path to Exile as a little bit of added security, but he really wants to try to make it so that he takes almost no damage from creatures from this point on.
All right, Thought-Knot Seer is going to attack Jim Davis down to 10. First turn, he's going to draw a Lightning Helix.
Ooh, and that's a good one. So Jim knows that there's a Path to Exile waiting in the wings. So I feel like, so what's tricky about this situation is a lot of times Jim would want to use his burn spells to clear blockers so his creatures can attack through. But if Jim just fires off a burn spell on one of Ben's creatures, there's a good chance that Ben still has a chump blocker and then uses the Path to Exile on that last turn, or on the other creature, which would make it so that Jim will have used his burn spell but will have not gotten any damage in. And because he has a Snapcaster Mage in his hand, Jim only needs to top deck one more burn spell in order for him to be able to go burn spell, Snapcaster Mage, burn spell, burn spell.
Jim is going to play an Arid Mesa for his turn. And he will attack with both of his creatures.
And so what's really nice about this is if Ben does nothing, then Jim gets a point of damage. But I think the more likely thing is, since Jim knows he's going to be firing off this Helix at some point with this mana, he might as well just do it now, get the Prowess trigger so that his Monastery Swift Spear does not trade.
So Lightning Helix is going to go up top. That will knock Ben down to 6. Jim will go up to 13. He'll have 2 Prowess triggers.
And now Ben probably has to use his Path to Exile on the Storm Chaser mage because it is the flying creature and the harder one for Ben to deal with. But that means this Monastery Swift Spear is still potentially going to be able to do some good work. What's also great about this Lightning Helix is it just gains Jim life. Like I said, we are in that racing scenario, and the reason that I said that Jim's deck does well in a racing scenario is because he has haste creatures, he has evasive creatures, he has burn spells, and he has sources of lifelink. So on all the axes that you would want to operate on in a race, Jim basically has access to all of them.
Now with Ben at 6, he's just a lightning bolt away from being dead.
Yeah. And this game bodes pretty poorly for Ben overall in the matchup. He was able to have 2 blockers on turn 2. He was able to have a Thought-Knot Seer on turn 3. On turn 4, he was able to have another 2 blockers and a Path to Exile. Ben was also on the play, and it looks like there's a good chance Jim is going to be able to finish him off. It isn't over yet, though, and Ben, in his own right, is pretty close to closing the game out as well.
All right, so Ben is going to cash in his Scion to play Drowner of Hope, which will bring along 2 more. The attack for 4 is going to knock Jim down to 9. And now Jim's deciding if he wants to fetch on Ben's end step. He's going to.
And he doesn't have to fetch on his end step because he has access to 4 mana without cracking the fetch land. So he's enough mana to Snapcaster Mage Lightning Helix. But I think he wants to open up the possibility to just top deck a Lightning Bolt and end the game right now. A Vapor Snag would also be a pretty nice top deck because it would likely buy Jim a whole extra turn.
And there's the Lightning Bolt.
Wow, so paid off for cracking the fetch land.
Just got a Bolt, Snap, Bolt. That's going to take Ben Friedman from 6 down to 0.
Game. Jim Davis.
Jim Davis is going to take game 1 on the back of a top deck Lightning Bolt to burn Ben Friedman out. Jeskai Aggro is going to be up a game over Bant Eldrazi. Let's check out the sideboards for these players and see if we can figure out what their plan's going to be.
Oh man, I just love seeing a game end with a Lightning Bolt.
Yeah,
really, there's nothing quite like it.
It's just good old-fashioned.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Friedman on Bant Eldrazi has 4 Rest in Peace, 3 Grafdigger's Cage. Holy moly.
Big commitment.
2 Stubborn Denial, 2 Negate, 2 Stony Silence, an Engineered Explosives, and a Warship. What do we think he's doing?
So I think the thing that Ben is most afraid of is just burn spells. And so I think the 2 Stubborn Denials, the Negates, and the Worship are all going to be good things to bring in. There's a small argument for Engineered Explosives. I'm not really in love with it, but the flyers are pretty annoying, and it'd be nice for Ben to have some extra ways to deal with them.
Now on Jim's side, we have 4 Spell Pierce, 3 Surgical Extraction, 2 Geist of St. Traff, 2 Gut Shot, 2 Path to Exile, and 2 Smash to Smithereens. What's he going to do? So
I really like the 2 Path to Exile. Ben has some really big threats that Jim would like to get out of the way. Geist of St. Traff ends up being kind of a nice burn spell, even if it is just 4 damage. Ben doesn't have a lot of blockers in the air, so Geist could be something that could be quite potent. And there's a small argument for Gut Shot. Those Eldrazi Sky Spawners matter quite a bit. There's Noble Hierarchs, they're Birds of Paradise, so Jim could look to the Gut Shots as well. They're a little weaker, but we might see it.
Well, that does make a whole lot of sense. Now, Jim Davis and the rest of Team Metagame Gurus, they do something really cool when they travel to one of these opens, is they usually end up gunslinging at a local game store, giving away a bunch of cool BCW and MGG swag. And one of the ways that you can get more events in your local game store that might end up having MGG set up something to come gunsling is to do game night.
Oh, nice.
So we're going to talk about StarCityGames.com game night. Every week in November, you can get some sweet swag, the exclusive Mole Warden tokens and pins. Andy and I both have the old Mole Warden on our lapel.
Oh,
when we
yeah.
come back to the booth later on. Go to StarCityGames.com/game night for that information. But there are also pins you can get in December.
Yeah, we have the Fintuition pin and tokens. You know, a really fun spoof on basically the card Intuition, which is one that everyone knows and loves.
And then in January, we have Squeaky Cheeky Acorn Breaker. These are exclusive to game night. If you want to have access to these creature collection pins and tokens, let your local game store know that they can head on over to go.starcitygames.com/game night to get StarCityGames.com game night into your local game store today. While our players are finishing up shuffling here, let's learn a little bit more about old 40 card Friedman. Ben Friedman.
Look at that cowboy hat.
He is 23, so he may not be on an actual team, but he does have a uniform, and that's how he likes to dress. He's 23 from Baltimore, Maryland, 9 open top 8s with a win, 4 invitational top 8s. He is good friends with fellow Magic players Alexander Magellan, Joe Demestrio, and Christian Calcano. He got the nickname 40 Card Freeman because he used to dislike playing limited, and he blogs about topics in philosophy. Now, does that look like the face of a man that blogs about topics in philosophy?
Are you kidding me? Yes.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah. The smug grin, the cowboy hat. If you know Ben at all, Ben's a super nice guy. I like him a lot, but like Ben. A lot of the people on the Open Series, he's a little bit of a character. You know, he's just like a unique persona, and that is definitely one of the things that I love about playing Magic. Is everyone is interesting, everyone is awesome.
My favorite is I enjoy every Halloween Ben Friedman likes to dress up as something real neat. And there was one time where he dressed up as an old man version of himself. And
really?
It was perfect. He shaved the top part of his head and grew out his beard.
Nice.
And wore pants that were pulled up. It was real good.
Yeah.
I do enjoy me some Ben Friedman.
So from this game, I want to see a start from Ben that is basically similar to the last one, but just, you know, slightly better. If you could have the Thought-Knot Seer on turn 2 rather than turn 3, that would be great. But honestly, I think really what Ben needs is for Jim to just have a slightly weaker draw.
Looks like Ben is going to start off on a Windswept Heath. He's deciding if he wants to crack it now or not. He won't. He's just going to pass the turn back over to Jim, see if he has a 1-drop. He does have Goblin Guides and Monastery Swift Spears in his deck, and there is that Goblin Guide. Trigger's going to reveal a Cavern of Souls that will go into Ben Friedman's hand, and he'll fall down to 18.
Yeah, Ben would have loved to have something like a Path to Exile there to take no damage. It's a small consolation to get that land. His deck is a mana-hungry deck, but he needs to have more than 1 mana per turn added to his board. So having a land like Cavern of Souls, while it's nice, he really wants those Eldrazi temples.
Well, Ben will fall down to 17 and use his Windswept Heath to go find a Temple Garden. He's going to take his turn. Let's see if he has an Eldrazi Temple or something of the like to play a spell this turn. Looks like he's just going to Ancient Stirrings.
And this is looking like a pretty slow start for Ben.
Ooh, he finds an Eldrazi Temple, but he's going to put that copy of Warship on the bottom of his deck.
Yeah. He would love to draw that sometime soon. I'm sure he's going to crack a fetch land as soon as he can or get some sort of other shuffle effect.
See if Ben has anything else that he can play for this turn.
So on the one hand, Ben could potentially play a land that taps for white to try to at least make Jim consider the threat of a Path to Exile. But I think just getting that mana online is you know, too worthwhile for him. He just needs to have access to as much mana as possible, and if he can draw another Eldrazi Temple, he wants to make sure that he's already played the first. All
right, Jim is going to go to 18 and use a Gitaxian Probe. And looking at Ben's hand, looks like we've got Cavern of Souls, a couple brush lands, Engineered Explosives,
Eldrazi
Displacer, and a card in between them.
Yep, a white card. And if Jim can land another creature here, I'm going to put a massive favorite on Jim's side.
Thought Not Seer was the other card. Perfect.
And Jim's looking at a full grip with a lot of options. He may just have a burn spell this turn and a Mana Strider on the following turn.
Looks like he has another Goblin Guide. That's always fun.
So I think the thing that he's worried about here is if he plays his other Goblin Guide, he can potentially get 2-for-1 by the Engineered Explosives that Ben has. So Jim could consider pacing his threats. That said, if he doesn't play the Goblin Guide here, he's probably just going to be using a burn spell. So I kind of like this from Jim. You might as well just get these Goblin Guides out, make Ben use his mana killing them. Your Mana Strider is probably going to be able to come down on the following turn uncontested, so long as Jim Davis has white mana. And then the plethora of burn spells that Jim is working with is probably going to be able to finish Ben off.
Jim is just going to play that second Goblin Guide. Attack for 4. The trigger is going to give Ben Friedman a Plains and reveal a Birds of Paradise on top of his deck and fall down to 13. We might actually just see Jim use a Vapor Snag here to save one of these Goblin Guides, depending on when Ben opts to use that Engineered Explosives, if that is the route he goes.
Yeah, he could do that. If he did do that, that would essentially mean Vapor Snag is pretty close to a Shock, which isn't really that bad. A lot of Jim's Lightning Bolts are going to his opponent's face, so Vapor Snag being a downgraded Lightning Bolt is still kind of along the lines of what Jim wants to do.
Explosives will come down for 1. Jim's going to bolt up top.
And Jim, wanting to use his mana, doesn't care so much about the Goblin Guide that he wants to keep that Vapor Snag up at all times. And he draws another Goblin Guide. Wow.
It looks like he doesn't have any white mana. So when you go to combat here, what do you think about attacking with just one Goblin Guide?
I would love an attack with just one Goblin Guide. Just try to deny Ben some of those triggers. You know almost 100% that Ben has to crack his Engineered Explosives, and Jim is just not attacking with either. So great heads-up play by Jim Davis. That is the great Magic player we know and love, and it's great to see some great, tight, and kind of unconventional play.
So Ben is going to crack those Engineered Explosives on Jim's end step. He is down to 10.
And Jim chose not to use the Vapor Snag there. I think it's probably safe to assume that Ben is going to play some big blocker this turn, and since Jim already has another Goblin Guide, it makes sense that he would want to just save that Vapor Snag to keep the path clear. But this Thought Not Seer is kind of a wrench in that plan.
So Thought Not Seer comes down. We may just see Jim use Snapcaster here on a Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, so what's nice about this is if Jim goes for the Lightning Bolt, which it looks like he's going to, he can bolt Ben down to 7, and then Ben is basically, no matter what he takes, is going to be, let's just say he takes the Lightning Helix, then Jim is going to be able to get in another 5 damage on his turn, putting Ben down to 2. So Ben doesn't really have any good options here. He could take the Vapor Snag, in which case Jim would be able to attack with both creatures, just, throw away one of them to the Thought Nuts here.
Well, there is the Vapor Snag. Jim Davis is going to flash back that Lightning Bolt, knocking Ben down to 7. Goes to his draw step here, trying to find some white mana, and he doesn't, but he does find a Storm Chaser Mage.
And that is a great top deck. So I think what I would do here is play the Goblin Guide and the Storm Chaser Mage, and then just attack with everything. You're going to get at least 1 damage through. Your flyer is still going to be around doing damage. And then with your Lightning Helix, you only need to pair it with 1 more burn spell to finish Ben off.
Storm Chaser Mage and Goblin Guide. Got to put them in the right order.
Yeah, and I do like an attack with all of them. You could just do an attack with the Storm Chaser Mage. That would be a little bit more of a patient play, but you'd have to worry about Ben untapping, having an answer for the Storm Chaser Mage, and stabilizing at 7 life, which is significantly different than Ben Friedman being at 6 life.
All right, well, Storm Chaser Mage is going to attack.
And there's a good chance that Ben just chump blocks.
Ben just takes it and falls to 6.
But it looks like he needs that Birds of Paradise, you know, for its mana. So, and the plan here might be to try to use something like Eldrazi Displacer to keep the Storm Chaser Mage under control. So because Ben has an Eldrazi Temple, he does have enough mana to play a land this turn, play Eldrazi Displacer,
and activate it.
And activate it without needing the Birds of Paradise. So, but, yeah, so I kind of like the chump block with the birds on the previous turn, but, you know, it's certainly not a clear mistake or anything like that. Ben certainly knows what he's doing here.
Do you think Ben's going to attack with that Thought-Knot Seer?
It's a little dicey. He can, but I think that I would probably try to hold off for 1 turn. He knows that Jim has, I believe he knows that he has the Lightning Helix from the Thought-Knot Seer.
Yep.
He knows Jim doesn't have any white mana, but top deck white mana could be quite the problem. And because Jim is at 18, it's going to be a while before Ben is able to kill Jim. So Jim has a lot of time to basically draw whatever he needs to finish Ben off.
Well, Jim is going to find a Gitaxian Probe that he'll play with mana and see 4 lands in Ben Friedman's hand. Cavernous Souls, Brushland, Breeding Pool, and Windswept Heath. It's going to go to combat. The Eldrazi Displacer will blink the Storm Chaser Mage, and Jim found an Inspiring Vantage, so he does have white mana now. And once again, we're in a spot where Jim Davis is 1 Lightning Bolt away from victory.
Yeah, he really is, and that's, you know, if Ben would really like to have 1 more point of life. He does have this Engineered Explosives, which is kind of nice. Engineered Explosives for 2 is going to be able to clean up not only the Storm Chaser Mage, but the Snapcaster Mage also. But Jim only needs to draw another burn spell or a Snapcaster Mage, and he's going to be able to finish Jim off, or Ben off in short order.
All right, the Explosives is going to be popped for 2.
And now if I were Ben, I think I would attack with the Thought-Knot Seer. Another option would be to attack with the Displacer and keep the Thought-Knot Seer back.
Or you just attack with both.
Can attack with both. This is a 3-turn clock.
Got to try and finish the game.
Yeah, Ben knows that he's almost dead. He knows Jim's last card in his hand, so Ben is working with complete information.
Yeah, he still has mana to use the Thought-Knot Seer.
Right.
Or the Displacer.
But now this Birds of Paradise will be a chump blocker. At least I think it will be. I guess there's not a whole lot of difference between 6 life, 5 life, and 4 life. It's those 3-point increments that are the real keystones.
Now Jim's deciding if he wants to try and attack here or not.
I think Jim is thinking about whether or not he wants to use the Helix on the bird, and or if he wants to try to use the Helix to get a Prowess trigger on the Storm Chaser Mage once Ben goes to blocks. But I think this is just an attack to gobble up the Birds of Paradise and make Ben use his mana with the Displacer.
All right, so the Helix is going to go up top. That's going to take Ben down to 3 and Jim Davis up to 14, which is still the 2-turn clock from the Thought-Knot Seer and the Displacer. Displacer will blink the Storm Chaser Mage. Oh, and Ben just found a Path to Exile.
Yeah, so Ben is basically at the point where he's stabilized the assault from creatures, but he has a very small window to close out the game before Jim is able to just top deck a Lightning Bolt.
Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix, or Snapcaster Mage
Ooh,
is
and there we
game,
go.
and there's the Lightning Helix. Such a large portion of his deck is live for a couple of turns, and both games he finds exactly what he needs on the last possible turn.
Yeah.
And just takes the game. Jim Davis is going to win this match 2-0 with Jeskai Aggro over Bant Eldrazi, doing exactly what Mr. Boswell said needed to happen. Get in some damage with creatures and then just finish the game with burn as you're falling on your own sword.
Yeah.